Hello, my name is Dawn Verbrugge, and I'm the COO here at Nutshell. I wanted to welcome you to the webinar today. We're hosting with CSO Insights. We're thrilled to have CSO Insights here because they're really going to talk to us about CRM user adoption and how your sales team can improve their performance. And these are topics that are really front and center for Nutshell. For those of you who are not familiar with Nutshell, we're a CRM for small business sales teams. We know your sales teams are diverse, with traditional outside reps sitting alongside millennial digital native. That's why we've built Nutshell with the most flexible ways to manage your deals, with lists, maps, charts, and a drag and drop pipeline, so all your reps will use and get value from our CRM. Since user adoption within the CRM is really important to us, we're really pleased to have Jim Dickie here from CSO Insights. Jim is the co-founder and research fellow with CSO Insights, a division of the Miller-Heiman Group. Miller-Heiman's a research firm that specializes in benchmarking how companies are leveraging people, process, and technology to optimize the way they market to, sell, and service customers. Jim has over 29 years of sales and marketing management experience. He began his career with IBM and Sterling Software, and then went on to launch 2 successful software companies. Jim is also a contributing editor for CRM Magazine, Top Sales World, and Harvard Business Review. He's the author of the Chief Sales Officer's Guide to CRM, Insights into High-Tech Sales and Marketing, and the co-author of the Sales and Marketing Excellence Challenge and the Information Technologies Challenge. Obviously, Jim is very knowledgeable on this particular topic, and we're thrilled to have him here. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Jim. Jim?
Our 20th anniversary edition of CRM. It's now an online publication. I'm still writing for him, and I'm still seeing a lot of things that need to be done. And especially around, the issue of making our salespeople more productive, more efficient, more effective. And so I went back through and started taking a look at the data that we've collected over that 20-year period and really focused on the small business area. Companies who are under $10 million in revenues, under $25 million in revenues, to try to get an idea of what's really going on in that marketplace and really what can we do to optimize the performance of those sales teams as well. And I think that one of the things we're seeing right now, if there was ever a time that sales was easy, now's not it. One of the metrics we've been gathering since 1994 is taking a look at kind of the health of the world of sales by looking at what's the percentage of salespeople that are meeting or exceeding quota. That's kind of been a litmus test for us. If a lot of my sales guys are hitting their number, then probably our company's hitting its number. And what we've seen is a drop in performance over the last several years. Back in 2012, we were at 63%, dropping down to 58% in 2013 and 14, then continuing to dribble down to 55.8% last year. We're in the process right now of gathering additional data. And I took a look at it from the first 1,100 companies that we've surveyed so far this year, and that number is going to be below 53%. In fact, for the small business marketplace, it's coming in at 51.8. So all of a sudden, we're seeing this, huge drop-off in performance. The question is, what do we do about that? How can we reverse the trend? We've been going out and asking our salespeople to, work harder, work harder, work harder. And so now it's time to work smarter. So I'm going to go through some of the things we've been finding in our research. And again, we're going to leave some time for Q&A at the end. So if you have something that you would like us to address, feel free to drop in some comments and we'll allow time for that. But let's get into one of the changes that we're seeing in the marketplace right now, which is this kind of a new discipline inside companies, big and small, called sales enablement. A lot of us have, sales operations discipline within our company where we have people in sales management maybe that's looking at things like, let's take a look at, the numbers the numbers for the forecast and that. Salesforce enablement is taking on a different type of role. And my colleague, Tamara Schenk over in Wiesbaden, Germany, she actually defined it as what it is. It's a strategic cross-functional discipline. It's not just in sales. It's also figuring out what can marketing and sales do together? What can sales and services do together? What can finance and sales do together? But it's really designed to, sales operations is more the bean counting type of exercise. Sales enablement is about finding more beans to count. So it's focused on increasing sales results and productivity. It's doing that by providing the salespeople and managers with the information they need, the training they need, the coaching they need, for the entire sales team to really support working with a customer across the customer's journey. But the number one thing that Tamara added at the end is it's got to be powered by technology. Now, again, I'm a technologist by trade, started off with IBM a long time ago, but I've also got a healthy skepticism for technology. And so we're going to go through and kind of take a look at really what's going on today. But on the positive side, when I started taking a look at the best practices, again, looking at companies who've done a really good job of impacting sales performance, utilizing technology along with services to other salespeople, we've seen a big increase in performance. We took a look at a consumer products good company, 24 salespeople. They went through in an 18-month period by utilizing a different type of way of leveraging technology to make salespeople more productive. They increased revenues for the firm by 51%. Took a look at a company that's in the medical product space, small sales force, 12 people, but their big challenge was how do I go and introduce new products successfully in the marketplace? And by having additional capabilities and information in their CRM systems, they reported a 240% increase in close rates of new products. We also saw Bright Pearl out of the UK, again, smaller firm, be able to decrease the time it takes to get a new sales rep up to speed from 9 months down to a little bit over 6 months. So there are other things that are out there. When it works, we are seeing that sales enablement can have a positive impact on the sales organization. The problem is these numbers are the exception versus the rule. Because as part of our sales enablement study last year, where again, about 22% of the participants were companies, with 10 million or less in revenues. One of the things we asked them was, what was the outcome of those initiatives you put together? You put together a new sales process, you put together a new coaching process, you put together a new way of, onboarding, salespeople. Take a look at those things and tell me what was the outcome. And only 5% said we met or exceeded all our expectations. Another roughly a quarter said we met the majority of our expectations. But a lot of people are still kind of struggling with things. They're putting a lot of time and effort into this type of stuff. But, I had a debate with companies and I said, well, there were 44% that said they met some of our expectations. And I said, look, if you started off on one of these sales enablement projects and your goal was to achieve maybe some of your expectations, then we'll count that as a success. But that's not what we're trying to do. And again, when we're seeing this decline in performance from 63% of salespeople making quota down to 51.8%, we've got to start reversing that trend. So when we take a look at things right now, there's a lot of interest in technology, but when we take a look at what's going on, people are already implementing technology out there. When we took a look across all the companies we surveyed and said, do you have a CRM system or not? The number came in at 78.7%. Again, for small businesses, 10 million and less, it's right in line. It's a little bit over 75%. So there's a lot of technology out there. The question is it really having an impact on sales? So let's take a look at some of our survey numbers and give you an idea on that. Because Jessica Keyes wrote a wonderful book called Info Trends years ago. And she said, when you take a look at technology, you've got to realize that technology does not beget a competitive advantage any more than paint and canvas beget a Van Gogh. And I had a chance to talk to Jessica. She was working with Microsoft at the time. And I just said, what do you mean by that? She said, look, it's a tool out there. And technology is there to support you. And she says, what it really is not technology. It's technology in the hands of the right people utilizing the right processes. That's where you're going to get a competitive advantage. And so when we take a look at the right people, the right processes and actually using it, let me share with you some numbers. And they're a little bit disturbing. Again, we've been gathering data on CRM adoption, on sales effectiveness over 20 years now. And going back into 2012, what we saw was that 43% of the companies we surveyed said the adoption rate of CRM within their company was greater than 90%. We actually saw some improvements in the marketplace. That number jumped to 49% in 2013, but it's been drifting, kind of dipping down in terms of a number of companies reporting really, really high adoption rates. Yet if you take a look over on the other side of the equation, into what's going on with the number of companies reporting an adoption rate of less than 50%, that number's been creeping up. So what we're seeing is there's a lot of technology in place today. The question is it really being utilized? And also, what impact is it having? Because that was one of the other questions that we had, when we wanted to start talking to companies. We said, okay, let's take a look at your CRM system that you've got in place. Some of these things have been around for like 10 years. So, they're the old legacy types of things that work in a client server environment. So we're doing that along with some of the newer things. But what we asked was, we said, what are the top 3 benefits you're getting from that? And before we get into that, let me just talk to you about a little bit about sales adoption rate, your sales process rates, because this has a big deal on adoption. Because when we went to look and took a look at the adoption rates, we said, let's take a look at the level of sales process that a company has. And what we found is there's 4 levels of sales process that most companies tend to adopt. Now, level 1 is random, where basically I've got 10 salespeople and they all think of themselves as being CEO of the business, and so they do their own thing. And it doesn't mean you're unsuccessful, but it does mean you're unpredictable because people are doing different things and you don't know what's really impacting sales and what's not. We went to level 2, that's informal process, where now there is a way of doing things. Everybody's trained on it. We've gotten some, some consensus on what we want to do, but it's more of like tribal wisdom. We've been doing these things for a number of years and we think it works, but we don't really know why. Then moving up to level 3, where there is a formal sales process. We get together the whole sales team, 10 or 15 of us sitting in a room and we really talk about it. We say, okay, what's the right way of doing a needs analysis? What's the right way of doing education? What's the right way of doing forecasting? We all agree upon things. We get everybody on board. We're all using the same vocabulary. And then there was dynamic process, where now we've got everybody utilizing the process, but we've got CRM in place. And it's now monitoring what salespeople are doing. It's helping to identify changes in the marketplace that we need to address. And we went back and took a look at what's the adoption rate based on what you are in terms of the number of companies who report they have an adoption rate of greater than 90%. Now, if you're down at random, only 16.6% of the firms we surveyed said their adoption rate is high. Moves up to 26.9% when you get to informal process, moves up to 39.8% at level 3, moves up to 61.2% for level 4. And we're going to come back at the end of my discussion. We're going to talk about what impact this has on revenue attainment for a company, because there's a huge type of thing that really will drive things home. So we can start to see the process has a big impact on CRM adoption rates. But what we also want to understand is, what are the roadblocks in the way? Why aren't more companies, making great use out of technology to support their sales organizations? And what we found is that there were 6 things that you need to be aware of that can impact the success or failure of your CRM projects. Now, in terms of going through these benefits analysis, what we said was when you take a look at CRM, we're talking about what are you getting from your CRM system today? And what we're finding is that there's a lot of things that help improve the efficiency of reps. Number 1 on the list was we're improving sales communications. Number 2 is we're streamlining the forecast process. Number 3 is reducing the admin burden. And I think those are all really important things, because today when you talk to salespeople and you say, how are you spending your average work week? Only 35% of the time is spent on selling. So anything else we can do to improve their productivity, that's a good thing. But in reality, I was surprised when we look at the bottom of the list, only 12.6% of the companies reported that they're increasing revenues as a result of their CRM system. And it's really kind of interesting, because when we go and we take a look at those companies and we see what they're doing, I could have 2 companies, they've got exactly the same CRM system installed, but it's the way they're using it that's impacting things. And if we only focus on efficiency of our salespeople, we'll generate efficiency results. So how do we go about really driving more revenues with things? Because the technology is pretty robust today, it's very rich, but what's keeping it from impacting revenues? And again, what we found is 6 roadblocks. And so let's go through those, and then we'll kind of explore some of the things on Q&A. But the number 1 thing is what we're seeing is there's no motivation or consequences for using CRM. There are people out there today, and what we've got to do is, one of the things we found was when we talked to companies and we said, let's take a look at the compensation plan that you've got in place. Are there any bonuses? Are there any commissions? Are there any spiffs tied to actually utilizing the CRM system that you've got in place? Only 31.2% of the companies said yes. And when we talked to them about it, same thing for sales process, what's motivating people to want to use the sales process? only 19.5% of the companies said that they were utilizing that as a factor of determining compensation. And we think that that's really a chance for you to go through and upfront start to motivate people to do things. And you can do it a number of ways. It doesn't have to just be cash options on the things. But we need to understand that when we're making a sale with our CRM system, the first sale we need to make is an internal sale. What's in it for our salespeople? You know, what's going to be better for them? And so if we can start going in there and start showing them that, hey, we're doing this, it's not just for the company. Yeah, we'll get a company benefit out of this. We'll get a sales management benefit out of this. But here's what's in it for you. You know, what would happen if all your information was in one place? What would happen if people just stopped calling you all the time? We did a benchmarking of a company recently, and they said that their average salesperson is spending 4 to 12 hours a week answering phone calls from other parts of the company because their people don't trust the information that's in CRM system, or they don't have a CRM system, so there's no place to go. Well, 4 to 12 hours, that's 10 to 30% of a salesperson's 40-hour work week. And so those are the types of things where you could say, look, if the information was in there, we'll go through and get the other parts of the organization to start working with you on that. And they'll start going to the system in place so they won't bug you. And you can spend more time selling out there. So think about that in terms of when you start to implement these things. You know, can you start showing them, can you start demonstrating to them what the benefits are? I think, you know, going out and talking to the CRM solution providers, you know, they've had experience working with people on kind of making this kind of transition. So, you know, get them to help out with some case studies and things like that. But we have to do that upfront work to really kind of set the stage for, okay, CRM's not my enemy. It's not a, you know, just busy work. It's really something designed to help me hit my number, and that's going to be good for me. It's going to be good for the company. Now, the second thing that we're seeing out there is that people are running into roadblocks around data accuracy. You know, and take a look at here, what we said is, you know, what percentage of the data in your CRM systems is accurate? And we split it between customer data accuracy and prospect data accuracy. And what we're finding here is, again, looking at the 90% range, only 28% of the 0.5% of the companies we surveyed said that their customer data accuracy is greater than 9%, falls off to 8.5% when we're talking about prospect data. And one of the major things that we found is an impact on this thing is your system easy to use or not? If all of a sudden I find that I'm supposed to be putting information into CRM and I just got off the phone with a customer and I was a prospect and I was talking to them about what they were going to be doing, and I've got all this information and I've got to go to 27 different screens to plug this thing in, guess what? I'm going to write the information in my spiral notebook, but I'm not going to put it into the system. And I think that's really one of the challenges we're seeing right now is how do I get it easy for people to put data in there? How do I then go able to have other people be able to update it? So that let's say a customer support person's talking to a customer, they find out that somebody's got a new title or somebody's moved to do a different job position. You know, how can I go back and do those types of things? So we've got to start thinking about data accuracy, because if I start not trusting the information that's in these systems, that's again going to be something that's going to impact my desire as a salesperson to actually want to go through and leverage technology. Now, number 3 is that people are really not thinking about how do I support the person afterwards. You know, that they're not going through and putting things like product training or ongoing support into the project plans. And we think that that's a mistake. That's a mistake for 2 reasons. When we take a look at how companies rate their ability to just do training, it's not a core competency with very many people. There's more people that say it needs a major redesign or needs improvement than say, hey, that's something we're really good at. Only 4.6% of the guys think it's a core competency. And again, this is 2 things you need to take a look at. Is first off, what can you do to find the systems that will be intuitive for your people to use? But second off, you know, it's 9 o'clock on Monday. You know, that's when a lot of people start signing into their CRM systems because they're getting ready to talk with their manager, you know, later on in the day about what's going to be happening this week. Well, you know, how do I get help on the CRM system? You know, and so you got to take a look for is if we don't have a help desk inside, you know, again, do the vendors provide that kind of support that will go out there and help people utilize these systems? Because again, there are a lot of functionality in here, and I may be using some of it on a daily basis. I may be using some of it, like some of the sophisticated reporting capabilities, maybe once a quarter or maybe once a year when I'm doing strategic account planning. So again, we've got to be able to go back through and get people comfortable with the systems so that they use them, whether they're using them all the time or using parts of the system sporadically, that they're able to go back and feel that confidence utilizing the systems. Now, when we take a look at roadblock number 4, one of the things that we're seeing right now is that sometimes what we saw, especially in the old generation CRM systems, the one that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were designed to assume that one size fits all. Here's the way the system works, and you, the individual salesperson, has to figure out, how do I adapt to utilize the technology? Not as a technology adapt for me, how do I adapt to the technology? And it was interesting because I talked to Bob Epstein, who was one of the real visionaries in the computer industry. And we got into a discussion about the types of technology users. And he said, you've got to understand something. When you look at companies today, business users, there are 3 types of technology people. The first users are indentured servants, is how he described them. He says they're the claims adjuster, they're the bank teller, they're the accountant. They have to use the systems you give them, or they don't have a job. You can't be a bank teller today and be writing down credits for deposits and debit slips for checks. You've got to use the systems you give them. Now, he said the second type of user is kind of tricky because they're power users. So their title may say sales, it may say finance, it may say customer service, but what they really are is, they're kind of, secret programmers. They really love looking at technology. They're the first ones to, sign up for all this new stuff on their iPhones, etc. And so if you give them a system that's a little bit convoluted to use, they view that as, hey, this is great. This is a challenge. I'm going to figure out how to make this thing work. And so, but there are very few of those. He said the third class of users, and clearly salespeople fall into this category, are volunteer users. They're already doing their job. And, I may be, a salesperson who uses Post-it notes, and, I've got an old-fashioned day timer I write all my appointments in, and, I've got 10 years worth of spiral notebooks on notes I've taken during customer meetings. But hey, if I'm hitting my number, if I'm going to, the sales club every year, I'm feeling pretty good about things. So again, you've got to start worrying about, how do I get them to volunteer to do things? And I think one of the things you need to take a look at is, how are these systems set up? Because not all users think or work the same way. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I'm near the end of my sales career. And, so I think in terms still of text. I want the written reports. I want to print stuff out. I want to have it available for me. Take it with me on sales calls, etc. There are other people that view things that, hey, I like working in lists things. I want a list of all the tasks that I'm doing, all the opportunities I'm figuring out. The younger generation today is much more visual. They grew up in a different type of user interface. They like seeing charts, bar graphs, pie charts. I want to be able to click on those, drill down, get more information, or graphics. Being able to bring up a map of, I'm going to go and make sales calls today in Manhattan. So a map shows up on my screen, and it shows me all of my customer accounts on that map, shows me all of my prospect accounts. So I can sit there and say, well, geez, I'm going to be down here on the Lower East Side. Here's 5 other companies I can go take a look at. Go and try to call on. So again, what we've got to start doing is realizing that we've got to be delivering systems that support the individual user. We can't force everybody into one bucket. But if we can start doing that, and especially doing things around mobile, then I think that's something that can really start to, again, increase user adoption. Now, one of the other things we're finding out is for decades we have been telling people to put information into CRM, and they've actually done it. The problem is it's kind of gone into this black hole. We were talking to one manufacturing company about their CRM system, and they said, oh yeah, the joke among the sales guys is that the CRM system has all the WARN records in it. And I said, I know a lot of acronyms, I don't know WARN. And it says write once, read never. He says, we're writing all this information into CRM systems, and nobody's gone through and created the reports to allow me to get insights out of that. And really today, that's one of the most robust capabilities on the leading edge CRM systems is the great reporting capabilities. They're going to be able to go in and give you feedback on, what's the lead volume that we're getting into the company? What's the sales activity that's going on in my territory? What's the average close rate across other people on the sales force? Because I might find that, gee, Bob's really nailing it. I can start to see that, his win rate of forecast deals is like 70%, mine's 50%. That just reminds me, I ought to call Bob and find out what are you doing? What do you find is working better than the other things? But again, getting back to that whole thing of automating the process in CRM, if you do that, you can start to get really good insights into really what's going on in the sales organization. Now, this was shared to me by a company that's a technology company. And what they said was, we've gone in and just said, in the evaluation phase of our sales process, he said, what there is there are 7 things we tend to do. We do an RFP review of the customer, where we show them, here's what you were looking for, and here's how we stand up. Some cases we do the trial. So when you see here's the frequency, we don't do trials a lot, but we do sometimes. And you see next to these things a number, like a 3.1 for RFP review, 4.2. That's where they actually called the customer and got the customer to say, how valuable was this in terms of helping you understand what's going on with our products, what we can do together. So you start to see a mix of things that tell you something as a salesperson or a sales manager, because in this particular case, the 2 decision makers are the sales executive and the IT executive. Yet when I start taking a look across, the chart here, I see that these guys aren't involved very often. And this is a company that said, geez, we have a high no decision rate. Well, why? Well, because the sales evaluator and the IT evaluator were involved in the configuration and proposal reviews part of the sales evaluation process. The execs weren't. So it starts to give you insights on where's their communication gaps, where we're not communicating with all the right stakeholders to get things done. They will also surface for you what are opportunity gaps. Here what we find is that, doing an ROI analysis as part of the proposal, got a 4.5%, 4.5 rating on a 1 to 5 scale. Doing an implementation plan, same thing. So here are 2 basic sales tactics that are really gold tactics. If I just respond to the RFP review, only 3.1 in terms of value to the customer. But here's some things that have, really high ratings but low frequency. And that's, again, something that kind of pings me up. Why don't we get together? Why don't we get together, 7 or 8 people on the sales team, and let's compare what are you doing for ROI analysis? Can we start sharing ideas? I use this spreadsheet. I've got this user case study that I use. I've got this checklist that I have them go through to make sure they're ready for the implementation plan. And when you start to find things that say there's some gold here in the process, now you're in a position to go back through and work together as a team to get those things utilized across the entire sales organization and share all the best practices that individuals have developed. Lastly, when I get into number 6, it's realizing that, with CRM, there's a lot of focus on a lot of things, but change management isn't one of those, and culture is not one of those, and it needs to be. And by the way, this is not just the sales culture. Several years ago, when I wrote a book called Toward Sales 2000, I basically talked about there's a sales transformation pyramid. And when we took a look at hundreds of companies who had successfully implemented CRM, what we found was it was the approach they took. And that's shown here in the blue section the dark blue section is the initial thing they do is focus on the salesperson. What can I do to make that person more efficient, more effective? So that's the number 1 customer. It's not sales management. It's not finance. It's not executive management. It's what can I do to make that person more productive? Now, if all of a sudden I got all 25 of my salespeople, involved in this thing, and they're all selling the same way, they're utilizing the same process, they're using the same system. Now I can move up to sales team effectiveness, where I can implement things that go across what the entire company is doing. If I now do that, I can move up to business effectiveness, because now the people in finance can trust what's in the system. Now all of a sudden the people in customer support can know what the sales guys are doing. Marketing can know what sales is doing. By the way, sales can know what marketing is doing. And ultimately, you move up to enterprise effectiveness, where you get just outside of your own business and start thinking about things of how can I be sharing information with customers, with suppliers, with maybe channel partners, et cetera. But the basis of this thing, we said, was all this works is predicated on the bottom part of the pyramid. And that's going to work up front on saying, let's go back through and take a look at what our sales process is, and let's get it better. And then let's take a look at technology. And say, figure out can I use technology to automate that process, and if you will, optimize that process. And here's why that's important. Again, we talked about the 4 levels of sales process earlier, and I went back through and told you what the adoption rate were. Let me tell you what the percentage of salespeople achieving quota is based on if you're level 1, 2, or 3, or 4. So down at level 1, what we found in talking to those companies was only 46.5% of salespeople make their quotas for level 1 firms. Now that number barely moves at all when we go to level 2. So the difference between random and informal, not really that big of a deal. But if I can get up to formal process now I've got, our 10, our 15, our 20 sales guys all on the same page, gets up to 59.8%. But if I can get up to dynamic, the number jumps to 72.2%. So that's really the payback to your organization, is to go through and have that kind of formalized process, have it out there, get people using it. I can have a huge impact on the success rate of my salespeople. By the way, when we took a look at the same thing in terms of turnover, as we go up the process step ladder, turnover goes down. Why? Because when you get to level 3, and especially when you get to level 4, you're now working for a predictable company. You're able as a salesperson to go in and see how you're going to hit your number. There's fewer surprises to you on things. And so that's the type of thing where people want to work in that type of environment. So that's the other part, is not only having people, making them successful, but keeping them longer. So that when they get a call from a competitor, they go, I got it pretty good here. But the last thing to think about is the fact that done never is in sales. That the reason we need to be constantly taking a look and keeping track of what's going on between wins and losses and no decisions is that we live in a very frail ecosystem in sales. When we went out and surveyed companies, we said, what's the amount of change that's hitting your organization from modestly to significantly? And you start to realize that, it's not, let's get this thing ready and have a way of engaging customers, and then we'll just go execute that for the same way over and over again for the next millennium. Is there changes in the marketplace, and the process has to change. So when you take a look at things like customer expectations, they're expecting a lot more out of us. How do I get those best practices on how to answer those things? The competitive landscape changes. I'm competing today not just with other people in the United States. I could be a Nebraska-based business, manufacturing firm, and all of a sudden there's somebody from India who's going to be competing with us. How do I do that? There's changes in my customers' marketplace. So think about today, if you're a business that's selling to, hospitals. You've got a medical product out there. What happens if, Obamacare gets repealed? What happens if it doesn't? What happens if it gets replaced with something else? That's going to change your customer's view. So it's, again, keeping track on all those. And then there's self-inflicted changes where we change the breadth of our product line, the complexity of our product line, the rate of new product introductions. And remember, all these are cumulative. We're getting impacted on all these things at a time. And so really, we wouldn't think twice about turning to, if we manufacture a product or a service, we wouldn't think twice about turning into product development, going debug the product. I want this thing bulletproof. When I take out to my customer, I want it to work. Well, we've got to be constantly going back and debugging the process. Constantly being able to go in there, take a look at the individual salesperson's activity level and also at the higher levels to make sure that we're on track on this. So let me leave you with one thing. And again, this was shared with us by an oil and gas company years ago down in Texas. A smaller firm, but very innovative. And they said, look, when we realize we're going to implement anything new in our company, we realize there's the potential for running into resistance to change. And in order to overcome that resistance, we have to think about 4 things. So they had a formula that was P times C times V times F greater than R. The P in the formula, what's the pain associated with the way we're doing things today? What's the pain associated with a sales rep having to go through and look up records on customers they haven't talked to, but another rep has talked to? What's the pain of getting a new proposal out? What's the pain of updating the forecast? And really going through and saying, if it's really impacting us clearly, heavily, we've got to do something about it. So then we need to understand what's causing that pain. We got to go and do a little bit of diagnostics on these things. And one of the best questions I ever heard Dickie ask was a guy who worked for a small technology company. Was he got his 17 people together on Salesforce and said, okay, guys, why can't I double your quota? And they looked around at him and nobody says anything. And one guy said, what do you mean? He says, real simple question. Why can't I double your quota? And they go, because we quit. He said, why would you quit? Because we couldn't do it. So why couldn't you do it? And they got down into the specific things that were impacting sales productivity and sales performance. Now, if you've got those and you understand the pain and cause, then you can start thinking about what a vision of better looks like. We need a new process. We need a new coaching model. We need a new way of doing forecasting, etc. You may find a bunch of things. So the F in the formula is, what are the first steps you can take towards that vision? You don't have to do everything all at once. The most successful CRM implementations have been things that have been done over time. So that's why I think, right now, to be in a position to better utilize, all the resources available to sales, is go back through and do a little bit of homework yourself. What's the pain? What's the cause out there? We're conducting our annual sales performance optimization study. So if you want to take part in that, we'll be happy to send you the report, and I'll give you feedback again from your peers. But I think that's really where we're going on these things. We've got to figure out, how do we do, what things we need to do from salespeople to not have 51.8% of salespeople making quota, but getting back up to 55, to 58, back to 60, to 62, 63, or even higher, because that's really where the performance is driving us. So in terms of successfully leveraging CRM, we have gone over a bunch of things, but let's just open it up and see if there's any questions that anybody has on these things. Again, I will be happy to answer questions people have. The first one is, will there be a print version of the sheets and charts available as well? The answer is definitely yes. We're happy to share those things with you. One of the other questions that got emailed to me, it says, what can you explain more about mobile CRM or mobile devices? And I think that's really where we've seen pretty fast growth in terms of people going out and utilizing smartphones. It's one thing to have a CRM system that works on your desktop, your laptop when you're back at the office. That's nice, except what about when I'm in front of a customer? And again, the older traditional CRM systems had problems with mobile. The newer systems don't. They were designed to work, on smart devices. So you really can get information to that. So when you're in front of a customer, even when you're sitting out in the parking lot, maybe getting ready to go in and call on a client, you can go in and check things. So definitely, take a look at that. But that's the thing. We've got to have CRM everywhere. And I think the salespeople now also, especially the younger generation, they live and die on their smartphones. So we got to be able to have that. Taking a look at one more, it said, how can I get management to use CRM? Which is, I didn't address, and I probably should have. That's a great question. Because, the key thing on it is, I wrote a blog recently that said, if you've got a Sales 2.0 Salesforce reporting to Sales Management 1.0, you got a challenge. So if we're telling, CRM users, sales organizations, put all the data into CRM, yet the manager wants to, call you up and quiz you about the deal, you've really got to have that agreement between sales and sales management that, hey, we're either going to use this thing or we're not. And by the way, that's both of us using it. And if that requires you going to the CEO to break the tie, I think you need to do that. But that's a really good point out there that, we have got to get sales managements on board. So we're coming up on, let me do one more check, see if anything else has come in. And I think we're good. So again, just appreciate you taking time out of your day today to come in and talk about this thing. I mean, we've got a really interesting thing going on in sales right now where it is challenging, but I think whether we're resilient enough to respond to that. So again, anyone who would like to get more information on these things, happy to share with you the results of the sales performance optimization study on technologies. But again, if you have any questions or that, feel free to email me directly. It's Jim Dickie, JimDickie @iCloud.com. So thanks for attending.